And finally, we have come back for season two. Um, Entry into this football season. Multiple different times I was wanting to go live and just never pulled the trigger. Then it got so late, I may as well figured that I may as well just come on live when I go to the first video of the breakdown season. So, welcome in on this rainy mid evening on Friday, August 7th, year of our Lord 2026. We do have a jam packed show. It's the most wonderful time of the year, folks. Well, almost. Just a few quick weeks away from opening kickoff Labor Day weekend. And I am David Shaw, your fearless leader, back for year number 2 of Shaw's 10 Talk. We did 28 episodes, 28 of them. Want to thank each and every one of you. Without you, none of this is possible. We are back better than ever. We have some new things that I am very excited to talk to you about, little deeper team previews than the past. But what doesn't change is I will be here every Friday from now till the conclusion. That is Championship Monday. We are going to go deeper, more game previews, and of course predictions, breakdowns that don't hold back. Wouldn't be Shaw's 10 Talk without any of my hot takes, right? More importantly, I want to have more interaction with all of you. Comment, like more, tell me what's working, and actually, what more importantly, tell me what's not working. Thank you for riding with me, and let's continue breaking down the best conference in college football. I'm bringing no fluff, no corporate talking points, just real talk about these teams, the players, and the drama that only the Big Ten can deliver. The ball will be kicked off soon, but first we have to break down these teams, and they are getting back into their respective camps. For those that don't know, Big Ten Network began their campus tour last night. They already said something that I will be pointing out as well. This conference is wide open, and there are a lot of good teams and players, even though all the talk is about only 3 teams. Plenty of time for all of that. Come along. Shaw's 10 Talk starts right now with Phil Still's big trends. Number one, 70% odds these teams don't improve on wins based on talent lost to the NFL draft. Indiana, Penn State, Washington, Iowa, USC. First off, for Indiana, hard for them to improve on an undefeated season. Don't really know how that would happen, so that's kind of an obvious one. Penn State don't improve on wins. That, I believe, is going to be very difficult with their schedule. Don't believe me? Take a look at it. Plus, we'll get into it with the breakdown, I think, next week. Washington, Iowa, and USC. One of those I disagree with, and you'll just have to come back and find out which one. Number two, 70% chance Penn State improves its win total. Um, you would think one of these doesn't match the one that I just said, but they're actually talking about improving the win total just as in general. Phil's talking about their 70% odds these teams don't improve based on the talent lost. So those are two different stats. Penn State is involved with both of them, but can't take one without the other, obviously. Number three, 80% chance Indiana doesn't improve its win total. Again, we just kind of talked about that one. Kind of hard to improve on an undefeated season. So obviously, everything's going to come back to the median. And Indiana, they can go undefeated again. Nothing saying they can't, but are you improving on the undefeated season if you go undefeated again? So that kind of is a self-explanatory. Number four, since 2001, Phil Still's surprise teams list has failed only 3 times. This year, USC and Iowa make that list. USC, I definitely agree with. Surprise, I don't know if it's necessarily a surprise. I was talking about them last year quite a bit. I think this year the cupboard's even more full. They did have a huge injury yesterday in practice where their center got injured for the season. I believe it is a knee. So that's going to hurt the depth there at the offensive line position. And as you see later on, I am extremely high on their offensive line. Iowa making the list as well. Not a surprise. A lot of senior leaders coming back on this ball club. And they're supposed to be very solid on defense as well. Number 5, over 70% of teams on Phil's most improved list historically deliver. This year, UCLA and Wisconsin. Phil is very high on the Badgers. UCLA, I am very high on. So moving forward, there's some other teams that I think are going to be improved, but the record may not indicate it. And more on that later on. Number 6, turnovers equal turnaround. Phil's most powerful trend line throughout history has been this trend line. You create turnovers, you're going to create victories. Going up is Purdue. Well, that's because it's kind of hard to get any worse than what they were in the turnover margin last year. And Wisconsin. Going down, Indiana. Um, More on this a little bit later on, but that not everything can be perfect. Again, coming back for year number 3 under Signetti, and trying to go back to back. They did lose some pieces on the back end in the secondary. Of course, when it comes to the breakdown here in a couple of weeks, I'll get more into that. But that kind of goes without saying too with the turnover margin. Number 7, Phil predicts a 3-way tie for first. Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. His college football playoff field adds USC. So it kind of goes with the norm with the 3 that everybody's been hearing about all off season. And then obviously, like I was just talking about a little bit, USC with their depth and their roster, it should be definitely capable of moving on into the college football playoff later on. Of course, these are someone else's trends and don't mean they are gospel, but Phil has been doing this a very long time, so I would be very careful just throwing what he says aside. So with that, let's get to these position rankings and then the breakdowns. My preseason rankings are as the roster. So this is depth of roster. So returning players, what you added in the portal, and going into camp starting on this past Wednesday. Everybody now, speaking of today, at 4:15, everybody is back in camp and has had at least one practice. So depth of roster is first is Oregon, second is Ohio State, third Indiana, fourth USC, fifth Michigan, sixth Penn State, seven Washington, eight Iowa, nine Nebraska, 10 UCLA, 11 Minnesota, 12 Wisconsin, 13 Maryland, 14 Northwestern, 15 Illinois, 16 Rutgers, 17 Michigan State, 18 Purdue. Thing to notice about this roster, though, is this is not a ranking. This is not a poll. This isn't anything like that. This is just ranking out from one team to another what the best roster is and then looking at it as a whole throughout the entire conference. This isn't a prediction of who's going to win games, what's going to win games, or anything like that. It's just depth of roster. And the one that's probably going to get me the most trouble here, which I'm all for, but best coaching staff, number 1, Ohio State. Ryan Day returning, bringing in another NFL offensive coordinator. What he did with Patricia last year with the DC, I think that kind of self-explanatory. Now you piggyback it with what he's doing, with what Patricia said. So now you get an offensive coordinator to kind of do the same thing, an offensive coordinator that in the NFL that was kind of out on the fritz, and you bring him in, and now he's got a few fresh blood, and he's got the talent to go with Ohio State. I think the sky's the limit now with the offense, and I don't think much is going to change there. Number 2, Oregon. The interesting note here, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, but not new to the staff. OC, DC left for head coaching jobs, which I do think affected the playoff game last year against Indiana there in the Peach Bowl. So you can't really do serving two things. You can't, obviously, you're not going to do either one very well. So they promoted within on the offensive side and the defensive side. So they should be bringing the kind of the same type of system, so it shouldn't be that big of a learning curve. Plus, they've been in the building. They understand all that. Number 3, Indiana, I do believe that's self-explanatory. Number 4, and the reason they're 3, quite honestly, is just because the other 2 staffs have been together longer, if you want my honest opinion. Number 4, Iowa, 5, USC, 6, Michigan. Some are going to scoff at this because Michigan just replacing entire coaching staff, but when you're replacing the ineptitude, I'll be nice, of last year with Phil with Whittingham and his coaching staff, Mind you, the OC and DC have done the job before. They understand it. Majority of this coaching staff came with Whittingham from Utah, and he did keep some left hangovers from the Michigan staff, some of the good ones. So I think if anybody wants to sit there and scoff at that, that's my explanation for that. I guess we can go. I mean, I'm not banking this solely on experience, but when you have two like coaching staffs like Ohio, like Oregon and Indiana, that was the deciding factor. And that was the only reason I went that direction. Number 7, Illinois, 8, Nebraska, 9, Minnesota, 10, Northwestern, 11, Rutgers, 12, Michigan State. Here's another one, brand new head coach, but the coach has coached in the Big Ten before. So it's not that big of a deal. Yes, it's a brand new coaching staff, but I like Pat Fitzgerald's better than any of the head coaches below him. That's why he's there at 12. I don't think this is going to be the year, but those Big Ten teams that think that Michigan State's going to just stay down here at the bottom of the barrel and just be okay with what's going on, from what I'm reading and from what I'm hearing, he's getting the lion's share of the money up there in East Lansing, and Pat Fitzgerald is one heck of a coach. And we'll see what happens moving forward. 13 is Washington, 14 Penn State. I'm a Matt Campbell fan. I was not a huge Iowa State fan. Those are two different things. And he brought the entire coaching staff, and he brought pretty much the entire roster. You may as well change the Nittany Lions to the Penn State Cyclones. So that's kind of why they're down here. 15, Wisconsin. I think that's self-explanatory. Fickell's more on the hot seat than I think anybody in the country. More on them later. 16, Maryland. Another one that's high on the hot seat, Mr. Loxley there. Again, more on him later. 17, UCLA, brand new coaching staff, brand new head coach. 18, Purdue. I think that's self-explanatory. Not really much needs to be said there. Going on to the quarterback, number 1, Oregon. Dante Moore could have went to the NFL, could have been a number 1 draft pick. The number 1 draft pick in this year's draft. Chose to come back to Oregon because he felt that there were some things that needed to work on. Plus, he said, and I quote, there's unfinished business. So until then, he is the number 1 quarterback in this league. Number 2, Ohio State. Julian Sain played very well except for 3 games last year. First half, 2.5 games. First half against Michigan, then the Big Ten championship against Indiana, and the quarterfinal against Miami. Kind of basically the best 2.5 teams he played all year long. Texas, too early in the season. I'm not counting even Texas's defense. It's just way too early on. They weren't even the same team later in the season as they were. So I don't really count that. Plus, I mean, realistically, Julian didn't really look that great anyhow. So there's some room for improvement there, but I think with the returning quarterbacks in this conference, he's definitely up there, and he's definitely a Heisman Trophy favorite. So moving on, number 3, USC. So Maeva, not Maeva, but can't remember the cat's name, but he's returning back. He could be even challenging Julian Saint right there for number 2. I just went with Ohio State first because I thought he did actually do more of manipulating of the football than what USC's offense did last year. Number 4 is Nico, former 5-star. Not even going to really go into that much more. He's part of the reason why everybody's really high on UCLA right now. Number 5, Washington. We all saw the dynamics of Edwards last year. 6, Indiana. I have Hoover right here, mainly because of Kurt Signetti. That's it. That man turned the ball over way too much for me last year. And so he better hope the quarterback whisperer pulls his magic. And so, but I trust in Kurt, so that's why I have him at 6. So let's see what he can do. And he did some magical things with Mendoza last year. Maybe he can do the same thing again. 7, Maryland. 8, Penn State. Number 9 is Bryce Underwood in the University of Michigan. 10, Nebraska. 11, Illinois. Funny thing there is that's an ex-Michigan State quarterback. Michigan State actually hosts 3 of their ex-quarterbacks, Kim, Childs, and there's Hauser there at Illinois. Wisconsin at 12, 13's Minnesota. A lot of people are high on Minnesota. I see a lot of early drafts for next year with Minnesota Again, name eluding me right now, but Minnesota's quarterback being a possible first-round draft pick. Sorry, just don't see it. Just like I didn't see it with Sorsby, with all that talk before he got suspended and got kicked out of college football. Number 14, Michigan State. Weren't very good at quarterback last year. For whatever reason, Fitzgerald didn't enter the portal. He's going with the returning guy. Childs did leave. He's at Northwestern now, another odd move. But Michigan State, then Iowa. It's Iowa. Who really expects anything from their quarterback? 16 Northwestern, 17 Purdue, 18 Rutgers. And 18 Rutgers is down there because I don't even think they know who their quarterback is going to be. The interesting position for me, running back. A lot of debate here. I can already hear and see what's going to be moving forward. Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Michigan. Yes, number 2, Michigan. That backfield could arguably be the best in the country, not even the best in the Big Ten, but I do think Oregon's speed is better than Michigan's speed, so that's why I have them there. But look out for the true freshman hitter for Michigan, because I think he could be a stud, and it just depends on how much he gets on the field for the Wolverines. I do have Ohio State at 3, USC at 4, Penn State at 5, Iowa at 6, Minnesota at 7, Northwestern at 8, Rutgers at 9, Indiana at 10, UCLA at 11, Michigan State at 12, Washington 13, 14 is Illinois, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Maryland, Purdue rounded out. Wide receiver, tight end, I don't believe there's any question here. We already know who the number 1 is. That would be the Buckeyes. But very close on their heel, even though many people don't around here in Ohio don't want to believe it. Oregon is closer than what a lot of people think. They actually might have more depth than Ohio State, but because Ohio State has the freak, you kind of have to go with them, number 1. Number 3, Indiana. Number 4, USC. 5, Nebraska. Quietly with wide receivers and tight ends, which is the key part here, Michigan, number 6. 7, Illinois. 8, Washington. 9, UCLA. 10, Penn State. 11, Maryland. Rutgers, Northwestern, Minnesota, Michigan State round out your top 15. Purdue, Wisconsin, Iowa finishes out the list. Offensive line, where this whole meat and potatoes is going to get built here, and start paying very close attention where those Hoosiers start getting ranked from here on out. Offensive line, number 1, Indiana. Number 2, USC. Number 3, Oregon. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Michigan. 6, Iowa. 7, Washington. 8, Nebraska. 9, Penn State. 10, Minnesota. UCLA, Maryland, Rutgers, Northwestern, Illinois round out your top 15, and bringing in the bottom, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Purdue. Wisconsin, Michigan State are the 2 disappointing ones there. Wisconsin, Fickle's been there far too long to not be getting offensive line players in there, and especially even by the portal at this point. You have teams rolling into Wisconsin taking offensive linemen out. That's how bad it is in Wisconsin right now. Best offense. So what this is it's taking the collective points of the way I did the addition, and the numbers are the numbers. I don't skew them anyway. I don't look at them anyway. And here we go. Best offense. Oregon Ducks. Number 2, Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 3, USC. Number 4, Indiana. 5, Michigan. 6, Penn State. 7, Washington. 8, UCLA. 9, Nebraska. 10, Minnesota. Iowa, Illinois, Maryland, Northwestern, Rutgers. Those same. You're going to see the same teams here at the bottom pretty much all throughout. Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue round out the top 18. On to the defensive side of the ball, defensive line, number 1, Oregon, 2, Ohio State, 3, Indiana, 4, Michigan, 5, USC, 6, Washington, 7, Iowa, 8, Penn State, 9, Nebraska, 10, Wisconsin, 11, Minnesota. The defensive line completely different than the offensive line. Fickle, defensive guy, drafted defense pretty well. He just hasn't had any luck there in Madison to get any type of offense rolling there at all. 12, UCLA, 13, Maryland, Illinois, Northwestern round out the top 15, bringing in the bottom 3, Rutgers, Michigan State, Purdue. Kind of sounds familiar. Linebackers, here we go. Number 1, Indiana. Number 2, Wisconsin. 3, Penn State. Number 4, Ohio State. 5, Washington. 6, Oregon. 7, Iowa. 8, Nebraska. 9, Michigan. I even debated getting them lower than that, but I couldn't do it. But trust me, Michigan is going to struggle defensively because of the linebacker position. You had one just leave the school outright. You had another one was a senior, so he graduated, and another one transferred to Oklahoma. So they literally had no returning um, games played, plays. They had no returning, no returners coming back on at linebacker position. So that's why I'm a little lower defensively, but we'll get to them later on. 11 Michigan State, 10 Minnesota, 11 Michigan State, 12 USC, 13 UCLA, 14 Maryland, 15 Northwestern. Rounding out your bottom three, Purdue, Illinois, and Rutgers. Secondary, this is where some little debate could happen. Number one, Oregon. Number two, Indiana. Three, Iowa. Four, Ohio State. Five, Nebraska. Six, Washington. Seven, Penn State. Eight, Michigan. Nine, USC. 10, UCLA. Maryland, Northwestern, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin round out your top 15. And there's those bottom three again, Rutgers, Michigan State, and Purdue. Special teams, difficult one to kind of rate here. You're kind of going with some returners. You're kind of going with what you had seen the year before. If they did return and the guys that they did get in the transfer portal, you're kind of like lumping it all together. So don't really take this with a grain of salt, quite honestly. Special teams, 1 Indiana, 2 Iowa, 3 UCLA, 4 Ohio State, 5 USC, 6 Penn State, 7 Nebraska, 8 Oregon, 9 Michigan, 10 Washington, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Minnesota, Michigan State. Round out your top 15, bottom three, Maryland, Illinois, and Purdue. So after adding it all up, here's your best defenses. Number 1, Indiana. Bring back the most talented, except in one position, the secondary. It's without question. It's not even close. Number 2, Ohio State. 3, Oregon. Number 4 is Iowa. This is why a lot of people are high on Iowa. I'm there, but I'm not there. I don't know if that makes any sense. It doesn't really make much sense to me either. 5, Penn State. It's the entire Iowa State defense. That's basically it, because the entire Penn State defense went to Hokie land there in Virginia Tech. Iowa State was a pretty good defense last year, so a lot of returning players. Their schedule is it's dirt easy, so they don't really play a lot of the top dogs, and that's why I got Penn State up there. 6 Washington, 7 Nebraska, 8 Michigan. A huge drop off on Michigan, and you'll read and hear probably some others that have Michigan higher and are more excited about it. I don't see it. They lack in the secondary any depth at all past the first corner. And then I already talked to you about, I don't know what that was all about, especially considering I have all those turned off. Anyhow, number 9, USC, 10, UCLA, 11, Wisconsin. Wisconsin better hope their defense is 11th. That's all I can say. 12, Minnesota, 13, Maryland, 14, Northwestern. Rounding out the top 15s, Michigan State, Illinois, Rutgers, Purdue. There is your best defenses. So after all of that, combining the depth of roster and coaching staffs, here's my first power rankings. And remember, power ratings aren't a poll. 2026 preseason power ratings, number 1 is Ohio State. I think that goes without much debate, much question. Number 2, very close on their heels, though, is Oregon. Number 3 is Indiana. I need to say this right now. I do think some teams can knock off those top 3. I do think the depth of the conference has improved. That being said, these top 3 are it's night and day to the rest of the field. The other 15 teams, it's night and day. It's not even close. Moving on from USC down, the middle 4 through 11, 12, very close. You could see my number 12 team, Illinois, moving high up into the list by the end of the season, depending on how Illinois comes together. You could see Michigan dropping all the way down below the top 10 because how their schedule is and how the lack of returning players and the depth of that roster. Be interesting to see what the bottom 6 do, which is who we're going to be talking about here in a little bit. But the gap between the top three and the rest of this conference is why so many people say that the SEC is the best conference. Yes, the Big Ten's won the last three national championships, but which conversation are we having? We can use the SEC's talking points if we want to, back from the early 2000s. If you won the national championship, you're the best conference. Okay, going on that, then the Big Ten is. But going on the depth of the entire conference, I still have the SEC as the best conference. I do have Big Ten at number 2, and they're moving closer. But this bottom half of this Big Ten, they just have got to start putting more money into the football programs and really starting to attack football, or we're just going to be right where we're at. So moving on, number 4 is USC, number 5 is Michigan, 6 Iowa, 7 Penn State, 8 Nebraska, 9 Washington, 10 Minnesota, 11 UCLA, 12 Illinois, 13 Northwestern, 14 Wisconsin. UCLA and Wisconsin have a lot of people saying they're higher on them. UCLA, there's so much unknown. I don't understand how you could have them higher than 11. Wisconsin, what did they do last year to say that they're going to be able to do anything in this conference once again? And they didn't really do much in the portal, despite the AD when he gave the vote of confidence for Fickle and saying we were going to invest more in the NIL. More on this in a little bit, but they didn't really go and do that much. 15 is Maryland, 16 is Rutgers, 17 Michigan State, 18 is Purdue. So now we get to the team breakdowns. This video, I'll be attacking the bottom 6 teams, 13 through 18. Purdue, Michigan State, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern. Next week, I'll be getting into the middle, 7 through 12. And then 3 weeks from now, it'll be the top 6. And then moving right there, 4 weeks from now, we'll be moving into game week. And we know how those go. Break down every game in the Big Ten. Got to be playing in the Big Ten. Don't have to be playing Big Ten games, but if you're playing that week, I'll somewhat break your game down. 18 teams, that kind of makes it a little bit more different. So let's get to the first one of this year. Number 18, Purdue. They went 2-10 last year after going 1-11 in 2024. This team has been pretty abysmal for the last few years since making the Big Ten championship in 2023. They scored 18.8 points per game last season while gaining 343.6 yards per game. And defensively gave up 31.8 points per game, 423.5 yards per game. Not enough points scored and way too many given up is the theme from last year. Purdue's best and worst case scenarios: get bowl eligible, being the best, and fail to win 4 games again, being the worst. This program has got to start gaining some momentum. In case that's the stats given wasn't bad enough, here's a few more. Second quarter scoring: opponents 144, Purdue 27. Scoring offense: opponents 34.3, Purdue 14.4. Time of possession: opponents 32.45, Purdue 27.15. Picking up on the point right there, and it was absolutely abysmal offensively for this team last year. So enough about 2025. We aren't here to rehash all of that. In 26, the offense should be improved. Here are the Boilermakers unit rankings. Depth of roster, 18th. Coaching staff, 18th. Offense, 18th. Defense, 18th. Quarterback, 17th. Running back, 18. Wide receiver, tight end, 16. Offensive line through defensive line, 18. Linebacker, 16. And then everything else. Secondary, special teams, both 18. Biggest game at UCLA, September 19th. To have any prayer of a good season, the Boilermakers have to steal a road win somewhere. The Big Ten opener is likely the best shot. If they beat Wake Forest at home, they'll most likely secure their first 3-0 start since 2007. If they beat the Bruins, biggest concern, keeping up the pace. There were too many moments when games started to get away from the Boilermakers and they didn't have the firepower to keep up. The downfield passing game has to emerge, and the team has to get off the bus ready to at least get to the 30-point mark. Purdue scored more than 30 just 4 times over the last 2 years, going 3-1 when it got there. Player who needs to shine, junior quarterback Ryan Brown. The quarterback play has been blah ever since Jeff Brom bolted for Louisville. The passing game that went for over 3,900 yards in 2022 threw for just over 2,523, 2,224, and even though things picked up last year, the 2,606 yards weren't enough. The Boilermakers need more from the position. Keys to the season: find one thing on offense that it can do really well and keep doing it. More big plays, more takeaways, more sacks, more pass plays down the field, more explosion, more everything. Number 3, overall, do something to control the games. Too often last year, the Boilermakers had to chase or adapt to what the other side was doing. Purdue beat Indiana 35-31 in 2023 season finale for both teams. Since then, the Hoosiers have lost just one Big Ten game, Ohio State in 2024, went 27-2, played in 2 college football playoffs, and took home a national title last season. Purdue has gone 3-21. 2 of the wins were against FCS teams. The lone FBS victory was against Ball State and is 0 for the Big Ten in conference play. Even worse, the Boilermakers haven't even been close, with an average score of over the last 24 games of a nightmarish 36-17. Barry Odom has to somehow guide Purdue through a perfect storm of a program that had to be gutted and rebuilt. Meanwhile, Notre Dame is still on the schedule, just as it turned into a true national championship level powerhouse. The rest of the Big Ten went nuclear with money, influence, and expansion. And yeah, the most hated rival became the biggest thing in sports. Odom is a terrific coach. He has a great staff, and things are slowly starting to improve. It takes a lot, though, to get the Boilermaker special to get moving. The offense improved. It might not have seemed like it, but the offensive coordinator, Josh Henson, got a bit more out of the attack, even if it struggled over the last month when the schedule got nasty. The Boilermakers were 127th in the nation in total offense in 2024, 102nd last year, and it'll be far better this season with more from the passing game. What's working? Ryan Brown. He got a little bit of time in his first 2 seasons, and last year he started to show a spark, throwing for 2,153 yards with 9 scores and could run a little bit. He'll get to air it out a little bit because the receiving core will be improved. The O-line might not be a rock, but it's okay. It was good in pass protection and has to be solid again. The transfer portal was a big help here too, adding key contributors from both USC schools, USC Trojans and USC Gamecocks. The starting 5 should grow into plus type of an offensive line onto the other side of the ball. The Purdue defense will always be decent with Barry Odom at the overall helm. His defense was way better than it was in 2024, but it was still the second worst in the Big Ten. The Purdue defense was dead last in the league 2 years ago, allowing close to 60 yards per game, more than 360 yards per game, more than everyone else. It went from giving up 453 yards per game to 433 last year. What's working? Well, not much. Kevin Kane was defensive coordinator in that 24 season, but his 2023 defense was good. Last year, he handled the linebacking core at Minnesota, and now he's Odom's defensive coordinator. So the season prediction: it's so hard to properly gauge just how good Purdue is because the Big Ten is so nasty now. It'll take upsets for the Boilermakers to get to at least 6 wins, and it's possible with this excellent coaching staff and all the new parts coming in that the victories just won't come, but the roster is that much better. This is by far the best Purdue team since 2022, but the 3 problems are too much to overcome: the schedule, the schedule, the schedule, and the schedule. So the prediction is 3-9. The over-under is set at 3.5, so that is an under. Number 17, Michigan State. They went 4-8 after having the same record the year before the Spartans parted ways with Jonathan Smith. So now, can Pat Fitzgerald bring back Spartan toughness? Best case, worst case. Bowl eligibility is one of the Big Ten's better stories. A 5th straight losing season, which is very quite possible because this roster just isn't there. It's just not. They scored 24.6 points per game last year while gaining 345.5 yards per game. while the defense allowed 29.9 points per game and gave up 378.7 yards per game. Some more stats about 2025. Number one, tackles for loss. Opponents had 93 for 425 yards. Michigan State had 55 for 226. Number two, fourth quarter scoring. Opponents 91, Michigan State 65. So they weren't getting enough tackles for loss, and they were wearing down as games wore on. And number three, kickoff return average. Michigan State 25 yards, opponents 16 and a half. What that alludes to is they do have some depth, but not like I actually regret putting that in there. I put it in there because every team had three that I'd done, so I put a third. I put it back in. I did delete it because I can't say on the one hand that they're lacking depth and then talk about a depth piece here with the kick return average. They did lose a lot in the portal, and they didn't regain it all. The Spartans unit rankings, coaching staff 12, depth of roster 17th, offense 16th, defense 15th, quarterback 14, running back 12, wide receiver tight end 15, O-line 17, defensive line 17, linebackers 11, secondary 17, and special teams 15. Biggest game, Nebraska, September 26th. The Pat Fitzgerald date against Northwestern will be a thing, and going to Notre Dame matters, and going to Michigan State really matters, and going to Michigan really matters. But realistically, this will be a grind of a season, sandwiched in between trips to South Bend and Wisconsin. Beating the Huskers would be a moment under the new regime. Biggest concern, can the Spartans be more physical as games go on? It wasn't just the 4-8 record last season. It was that there always seemed to be a point when things would come to a stop, and then the score got out of hand. The offense didn't have the ability to keep up. The defense couldn't come up with a stop, and too many games turned into routes. One of the eight losses, six were by double digits, even though a few turned into blowouts late. As a program, there have been 24 double-digit losses over the last 46 games. Player who needs to shine, sophomore quarterback Alicio Milovijic. Have no idea if I pronounced that right. Sorry if I butchered it. This was supposed to be when Aiden Childs kicked it into gear and made the Michigan State program his, but he was way too inconsistent last season. The offense needed a boost, and in come Alicio, sorry. He doesn't run, but he's accurate. He was solid late and stuck around to be a key leader of the attack unless Florida Atlantic transfer Cam Fancher makes a huge move into fall camp. Keys to the season. Number one, the offensive line has to be better, but without much depth to count on. Number two, a dangerous pass rusher or three have to emerge. And number three, the skill players have to be more explosive. No school and athletic department is pressing the reset button harder than Michigan State. Not to bore you with the details, but the school lost both its president and athletic director last season. This all happened just as Pat Fitzgerald returned to the coaching life after 3 years off. Fitzgerald was fired by Northwestern following a hazing scandal within the program, which he claimed to have no knowledge of. He later won an unreported amount of a wrongful termination suit, and then there's the on-field aspect. Fitzgerald's 2022 Northwestern team went 1-11 and was 7-29 combined in 19, 21, and 22. He went 7-2 in that bizarre should be forgotten 2020 season. So yeah, it's due overtime, but it's also a fresh start for a program coming off 4 straight losing seasons. The Michigan State offense needs to be tougher and more effective overall. It had explosive parts last year, but there wasn't enough punch on the ground. There wasn't any punch from the offensive front. Enter new offensive coordinator Nick Sheridan, who spent the last 2 seasons working on Alabama's attack. There's a lot to get in place, but the Spartan offense should be better than 99th in the nation this season. So what's working? Everything was okay when the Spartans ran the ball. Sheridan's Bama teams weren't great on the ground, but Michigan State will pound a bit. It was 4-1 last year when running for more than 115 yards. Cam Edwards was a big-time back for UConn over the last 3 seasons. The passing game could be sneaky good. The quarterback was good when stepping in for Aiden Childs last year, throwing 10 touchdown passes with just 3 picks, and the portal brought in some nice pieces with K.K. Smith from Notre Dame and Frederick Moore from Michigan to work around the speedy Christian McCrary. What needs to be better? What needs to be better? The offensive line has to be night and day better. Again, the starting five should be strong, but considering how lousy last year's production was up front, the rest of college football world was all over a slew of Spartan linemen, with 7 blockers snapped up. Keep defenses out of the backfield. It was partly due to the indecisiveness of Aiden Childs at times, but the line didn't provide much help either, finishing 124th in the nation with 37 sacks allowed and was 129th in tackles for loss given up with 93. The top pass catchers are gone. Star tight end Jack Vealing is an Atlanta Falcon. Second leading receiver Omar Kelly is trying to hang on with the Miami Dolphins. And Nick Marsh, with his first-round NFL draft upside, is an Indiana Hoosier. Now defensively, it's a Pat Fitzgerald team. The defense is about to get nasty. Effort wasn't a problem last year under DC Joe Rossi, and now he's getting a slew of good transfers coming in to go along with a decent base of players. There are upgrades to make in several areas, but this should be more of a tweak than a total overhaul to get much, much better. What's working? You can't play linebacker on a Pat Fitzgerald team without being amazing. Jordan Hall is back after leading the team with 88 stops from his spot in the middle. Deion Crawford made 40 tackles and 12 sacks over his last 2 years at Buffalo, and former Maryland thumper Caleb Whitland steps in after spending last year banged up in Auburn. The staff filled the secondary gaps through the portal. They should fill in and help right away. It's a strength in numbers class with several options looking to fill in the safety spots around veterans. And can the run defense be stronger? The Spartans had a hard time when they were getting rumbled over, going 0-7 when allowing 100 yards on the ground and 4-1 when they didn't. Keys to the season. The offensive line has to be better without much depth to count on. 2, a dangerous pass rusher or 3 have to emerge. And number 3, the skill players have to be more explosive. So here's the prediction. How much magic can Fitzgerald create? There's a shot his team blocks and tackles better than last year's Michigan State squad did. Maybe it goes all mid-2000s, Northwestern, and finds a way to pull out games once the other side blinks. The developed depth is almost non-existent. The starting 22 has a slew of transfers who need to be amazing from the jump. And overall, the team needs to find something it can do well right away. I have the Spartans going 4-8 once again. Over-under is 4.5, so that's an under. There's no Indiana, Iowa, Penn State, or USC on the slate. All 4 of those were losses last year, and missing Ohio State is a gift. Overall, the schedule isn't awful, but Michigan State isn't there yet personnel-wise. However, going to Notre Dame a week before the Big Ten season starts is absolutely brutal, and going to Michigan and dealing with Oregon isn't a plus either. Fitzgerald needed a year to get to speed at Northwestern. Give him a season and then look out if Michigan State is truly engaged financially. We shall see. Moving on to number 16, Rutgers went 5-7 after winning 7 games the year before. The Scarlet Knights scored 28.7 points per game and gained 407 yards per game. And defensively, they allowed 31.8 points per game and allowed 432.8 yards per game. Best case and worst case scenario. A decent bowl game, a 3-win struggle, like a little bit less than last year. Rutgers' key stats for 2025. 1, second in the Big Ten and 5th in the nation in fewest penalty yards, 391. That's a Greg Schiano upkeep right there. Number 2, sacks. Opponents 38 for 219 yards. Rutgers 11 for 66. Not sure if that's to the defense or if that's to the offensive line. I'm pretty sure it's to the defense, but more on that later. Third quarter scoring, opponents 117, Rutgers 54. So much for halftime adjustments. Here are the Scarlet Knights unit rankings. Coaching staff 11th, depth of roster 16th, offense 15th, defense 17th, quarterback 18, running back 9, wide receiver tight end 12, offensive line 13, defensive line 16, linebackers 18, secondary 16, special teams 11th. Biggest game at Maryland, October 17th. The date at Maryland starts a mid-season run of 3 games in 4 weeks and 4 in 6. Win, and the Scarlet Knights will likely be 3-3 at worst, 4-2 at best if they beat Boston College. It'll take several upsets to get to 6 wins if they don't win this. Keys to the season. The Scarlet Knights are great at controlling games. They make you play at their tempo, and they're going to win the time of possession battle. Now they need the rest of defense to do more to go along with the improved offense. Player who needs to shine, senior defensive tackle Zaire Angoy. The 6'3", 300-pounder isn't a stat guy, but it's up to him to hold up in the interior of the line. The Scarlet Knights desperately needed a veteran anchor, and with another year of eligibility, Angoy has to be the veteran leader with all the transfers filling in around him. Biggest concern, the pass rush has to show up. To be fair, even in the years when the defense was good, the pass rush wasn't anything special. Last year, though, only UCLA came up with fewer sacks in the Big Ten than Rutgers 11. There has to be more pressure in the backfield in all phases. There's no margin for error at Rutgers as head coach Greg Schiano keeps trying to figure it out. No, it's not like the old days of the Big East when Schiano made his name turning Rutgers into a massive success from 2001 to 2011. But it did take 5 seasons to come up with his first winning record. Last season was the 6th year in part 2 of the Schiano era, and things got more complicated. The Big Ten got better, the schedule is tougher, and the defense needs work, but the effort will always be there. It might just take a tweak instead of an overhaul. Finally, the offense worked. Under Schiano, the defense was great after he took over the reins again, but the offense struggled. Last year, it was the reverse with a dangerous downfield passing game and an efficient attack that didn't turn the ball over. Enough parts are back to be even better. What's working? There's no reason to think the passing game will slow down. Quarterback Ethan Kalikamonis was drafted late by the Washington Commanders, but in comes transfer Dylan Longerin from Boston College, a veteran passer who will pick things up right away. The Scarlet Knights don't turn the ball over. The offense might not always crank up the production, but it doesn't hurt itself. The 11 turnovers last season were relatively spread out. That's the norm under Schiano. Several stars are back. Leading rusher Antoine Raymond returns after a 1,200-yard, 13-touchdown season. KJ Duff is a big-time receiving talent, leading the way with 60 catches for 1,000 yards and 7 scores. What offensively needs work? The offensive line has got to be better. There's experience with a promising interior returning, along with potential star tackle Ryder Langsdale, but the running game wasn't dominant and the pass protection was non-existent. Longerin isn't a runner. Losing tackle Taj White to Colorado doesn't help. It all tied together. Controlling the clock matters. Rutgers won when it ran well and lost when it didn't. Going 4-1 when running more than 140 yards and 0-6 when it didn't. There wasn't any pass rush against Big Ten's good run defenses. There's promise and potential at receiver. Ben Block and Vernon Allen should step up alongside A.J. Duff, but the offense has to replace 2 good veterans in Ian Strong, went to Cal, and defensive tackle Sheffield. Defensively, last year was a joke, just not a funny one if you're a Scarlet Knight fan. The 2023 Rutgers defense was a rock. The offense didn't carry its weight, but the defensive side did its job. The 2024 defense struggled, and the 2025 version, well, it crashed, finishing 127th in the nation overall. The transfer portal should bring in the help. What's working? Here come the new guys. It starts with the defensive coordinator, with former South Dakota head coach Travis Johnson taking over. The staff went out and got some defensive backs. Kid from Maryland, another kid from Citadel, kid from Villanova should lock down jobs right away. The defensive front loaded up too. Malachi Davis from Toledo, Jaden Burnett from Tulsa should be the veteran pass rushers this team needs. They combined for 12 sacks and 18 tackles for loss last season with their respective teams. What needs work? Besides everything, is Johansson really the right guy as the defensive coordinator? His Coyotes were great in his 1 season as the head coach, but his defense was just okay. It was better and stronger in 24 when he was South Dakota's DC. The run defense has to show up. It got ripped to shreds by everyone, allowing 210 yards per game and close to 7 yards per carry. It's asking the world of new 6 foot, 295-pound tackle Rondo Porter from Appalachian State to suddenly fix this glitch. Can Ty Morris really be the answer for the linebacking core? The Scarlet Knights didn't get enough out of the group, but Abram Wright did his part to hold up. Morris came up with 88 tackles last year for Rice, but the overall depth has to hold up. Keys to the season. The Scarlet Knights are great at controlling games. They make you play at their tempo, and they're going to win the time of possession battle. Now they need the rest of defense to do more to go along with the improved offense. My prediction, this should be a better team, but it has to force its own breaks. Start with this. The offensive line will be far better, and the pass rush will be stronger. That should be enough to push for at least one upset win, but the overall talent level is just okay compared to the rest of the loaded Big Ten. On the plus side, there's no dealing with Ohio State, Oregon, Illinois, or Iowa. However, the regular season finale against Michigan State is probably the only time the Scarlet Knights will be a Big Ten favorite. 4-8 is what my prediction is. The over-under is 4.5, so that would be an under. There are enough winnable games to make a push for at least 6 wins, but just about every 50-50 game will be a dogfight. There should be 2 wins against Howard and UMass without a problem, and home games against Nebraska and Michigan State are gettable, but the glut of road dates in the second half of the season will be too much to overcome. Moving on to number 15, Maryland went 4-8 last year. The Terrapins scored 23.5 points per game, gained 255.7 yards per game. Defensively, they gave up 26.5 points per game and allowed 226.5 yards per game. The Terps unit rankings, in my opinion, have dropped quite a bit over the past few years, which is why I believe Loxley is firmly on the hot seat. Here are those rankings. Depth of roster 13th, coaching staff 16th, offense 13th, defense 13th, quarterback 7, running back 17th, wide receiver 11, offensive line 12, defensive line 13th, linebackers 14th, secondary 11th, special teams 16th. Best case, worst case scenarios, a decent bowl game and third straight losing season and coach getting fired. Some key stats from 2025. Fourth quarter scoring. Opponents 102, Maryland 34. 2 fumbles, Maryland 7, lost 5 of them. Opponents 4, they only lost 2. So, and that right there, you're not doing anything in the fourth quarter, and you're losing too many fumbles, and you're not creating any. Number 3, sacks. Maryland 27 for 185 yards. Opponents 9 for 79 yards. So that means you're getting pressure on the quarterback. You're getting home, but you can't get off the field. That's what that tells me. Biggest game at Nebraska, October 3rd. For this to be a terrific season, the Terps have to hold their own in College Park. That means beating Virginia Tech and UCLA on the way to a 4-0 start. They have to sneak away a Big Ten road win from somewhere, and with a date at Ohio State next, beating Nebraska and Lincoln is the moment when they show whether or not they'll matter in conference play. The Huskers are 3-1 in the series. Keys to the season. Basically, the team of last year that took its lumps needs to have matured. This is still a very, very young team overall, and this will still be a stepping stone season, but everything has to be sharper. Experience isn't an excuse. There's as much returning production as anyone in America. There's more depth, more talent with a few nice transfers coming in, and there's rising star power. Now it all has to come together. Biggest concern, third downs. To keep harping on this, Maryland has to be better in big moments. It had an impossible time getting control of games as the season went on, and then it all fell apart. On the other side, the offense struggled late in the year just to convert more than 30% of their chances. Maryland has some experience in returning talent. With a manageable schedule, now Mike Loxley's Terps have to turn potential into wins. What can Maryland do to finally start to stand out from the pack? It's in a rough spot in the Big Ten. It doesn't have the history of the former Pac-12 teams that came aboard, or relatively recent in Big Ten time at least, additions like Nebraska and even Rutgers has a little bit more of an identity. Maryland is just, well, Maryland. It's a wonderful world-class institution, but football-wise, it still feels very ACC. It hasn't made a whole lot of noise since joining the conference in 2014. It last won a conference title in a fun 2001 ACC season, and it hasn't enjoyed a 10-win season since 2003. However, things seem to be rising under Mike Locksley with two straight 8-win seasons in 2022 and 2023. Instead of taking another step forward, the Terps had two straight 4-win seasons, going 1-14 after September. But the experience is there to turn this around fast. Locksley and the Terps have built for this. There's a lot to like offensively for the Terps. The offense stalled a bit too often over the second half of the season, and the attack couldn't get its mojo back. But there's too much experience and talent returning not to do a lot more under new coordinator Clint Trickett. When Malik Washington and the passing game are on, look out. Washington took his lumps though, and up and down for a season, but he got his at bats. He led the Big Ten with 473 attempts and should be ready to crank up the attack even more. The ground game was along for the ride, but the backs are in place to do a whole lot more. Leading rusher Dawan Williams was a fantastic receiver too, catching 45 passes, and in comes Harry Dalton III from USC to add another quick rusher to the mix. It was partly because of the quick-hitting passing style, but there wasn't anyone better in the Big Ten in pass protection. The Terps allowed just 9 sacks on close to 500 passes, and 3 stars are back. Tackle Rattel Perry and guard Isaiah Wright are back on the left side around center Michael Hershey. Starting right guard Alu Bahi left for LSU, and in comes Talik Lockett from Texas State to take over. So what needs to work? Working the running game more. Trickett will change this up a little bit. Last year it was too easy to let Washington throw, but he wasn't accurate enough, and the defense gave up points too fast, and the ground attack rarely found a groove. The Terps only ran more than 30 times twice, completing passes. It all tied together. There wasn't much of a running game to count on. Washington wasn't accurate enough, hitting just under 58% of his throws. The offense didn't keep the ball. The time of possession battle was a disaster with control for just 27 minutes a game. Move the chains a little more and watch how things flip. Lastly, scoring. It's hard to win when you don't score points, obviously, and at the very least, the offense has to do a better job of keeping pace. The Terps scored 20 points or fewer 7 times, and the only win was against a woeful Northern Illinois team. The defense was a problem. There was a pass rush, but not enough key stops. There were a few giant plays for scores, but nothing was happening against the run. The Terps were 16th in the Big Ten in both total and scoring defense, but this year they're full of veterans and upside. So is anything working? Here come the pass rushers. There was some pressure last season, but not enough. However, the top 2 guys are back, with Sidney Stewart and Zane Mathis combining for 13 sacks and 19 tackles for loss. There's depth on the outside, starting with Nasher Taylor, and on the way is super recruit Zion Ali, a 6'4", 220-pound Baltimore native who was arguably the best pass rushing prospect in the recruiting cycle. Good things happen when the pass defense wasn't miserable. It was never a brick wall, at least against the Big Ten teams, but the Terps either won or made it a fight when allowing opposing passers to complete fewer than 65% of their throws. The linebacking core has playmakers. Daniel Wingate has good all-around skills in the middle, leading the way with 102 tackles with 6.5 tackles for loss and a pick 6. Trey Reddick knows what he's doing on the outside, and Carlton Smith was 3rd on the team with 64 tackles. The defense has to get off the field. It's not a coincidence that the 22-23 Maryland teams each allowed fewer than 40% third down conversion rate in their respective seasons, and each won 8 games. The 24 team allowed over 40% and won 4 games, and last year's version gave up 43% on the season and 35% or fewer in the 4 wins. Again, about the pass defense. It wasn't just about the completion percentage allowed, which tied into third down issues. It was about consistently getting hit hard through the air. Only Illinois and Northern Illinois managed fewer than 215 yards through the air. So the season prediction goes like this. Maryland might be better, and there's a lot to look at on both sides of the ball with all the veterans returning, the depth and the promising talent amassed, but the Big Ten might Big Ten on the Terps. This should be a much better team than last year's last 2 versions. It should be more explosive on both sides of the ball, but there can't be the slightest hiccup anywhere. The schedule should help, but a lot depends on the improvement of a few other teams due to have stronger years. Maryland misses Indiana, Michigan, Oregon, Washington, Iowa, and Minnesota. That's not bad. However, forget about road games at Ohio State and USC, and dealing with Penn State at home will be an absolute dogfight. Other than that, everything else is winnable. Can the Terps take home games against Illinois and against an improved Wisconsin? How about showing up on the road against Nebraska or Purdue? Hampton, Rutgers, at UConn, those have to be wins or else. UCLA, Virginia Tech are home games. Throw in something like the date at Purdue or an upset somewhere, and 6 wins and a bowl game are a must. But after the last 2 years with this schedule, Maryland has a chance to be noticed if everything comes together. I have the Terps going 6-6, and with the over/under set at 5.5, that will be the first over of the year. And then, so now we move on to number 14. That would be the Wisconsin Badgers. Probably no team with more pressure on them than maybe Maryland, but the Badgers went 4-8 last year. Wisconsin was the worst offense by a large margin last year, scoring 12.8 points per game and gaining just 136.4 yards per game. Those again, scoring 12.8 points per game and gaining 136.4 yards per game. Yeah, the silence was on purpose for you to sit there and just contemplate that one for a minute. Defensively, they allowed 21.6 points per game and 323.5 yards per game. So your defense gave up basically 22 points a game, and you never were in the game because you couldn't move the ball. Unreal. The Badgers unit rankings: coaching staff 15th, depth of roster 12th, offense 17th, defense 11th, quarterback 12th, running back 15th, wide receiver, tight end 17th, O-line 16th. Absolutely disgusting for a Wisconsin team. Defensive line 10, linebacker 2, secondary 15, special teams 12. Best case, worst case scenarios: win more than 7 games for the first time since 2021. A third straight losing season and meaning Fickell gets fired. That would be the worst case scenario. Key stats from 2025. First downs, opponents 204, Wisconsin 169, fewest in the nation. 169 first downs. Number 2, fumbles, Wisconsin 16, lost 4 of them. Opponents 6, lost 1. 3, scoring offense, opponents 21.6 per game, Wisconsin 12.8 per game. Had to bring that one back up again. Biggest game, Notre Dame in Green Bay at Lambeau, September 5th. Absolutely no one will think the Badgers can win this game. Notre Dame has a top 5 team entering the season. In my opinion, they're higher. Wisconsin has to prove it, can score under Fickell, and this screams good effort loss for Bucky. The entire program can turn around with one gigantic win. Keys to the season: score, score, score more, and checks notes, score again. In recent memory, has there been a weirder college football situation than what's happening at Wisconsin? Not only is the Luke Fickell era not working, it's not working at an obscenely incompetent level. With the team getting worse and worse in each of Fickell's 3 seasons, he's still around, and yet things feel hopeful, question mark. But why did this go so wrong? At the end of the 2022 season, Fickell seemed like the right guy at the right time. He was coming off a run of 53 wins with a college football playoff appearance in 5 seasons. He took over a Badger program that needed a boost after the Paul Chryst era had started to go a tad stale. Here's the question: would the Badgers take back Paul Chryst right now? Honestly, I'm just asking because I have no idea. Would they take back Paul Chryst right now? And the thing that needs to be remembered about Fickell at his old stop, that was at UC. That would be at the University of Cincinnati, and that was before the University of Cincinnati went to the Big 12. That's not the current state of Cincinnati football right now. Would Fickell have made the playoff at UC under the current situation that UC is in. Some may say that Fickell's been overrated for quite some time, but I digress. But by stale, that meant a 9-4 2021 season and a 2-3 start in 2022. To be fair to Fickell in Wisconsin, it wasn't a move where one step was needed. It has since dipped after all of the losing over the last 3 seasons, but the ground game wasn't the same killer of the late 2010s. There had to be more of a passing game, and Fickell changed the style and identity. A horrible run of quarterback injuries meant the passing game sputtered. There was no longer the dominant ground game to take over, and the entire machine broke down. But a funny thing happened over the second half of last season. The defense became dominant. Wisconsin beat Washington and Illinois, hung around with Indiana for a while, and all of a sudden it was possible to see how this could start to turn back around. Combine the defense that kicked it all in with a merely competent offense, and instead of being fired or put on the hot seat going into this year, Fickell was signed through 2031 with a promise of more money being put into the NIL. Just being competent, but more on that right now. I was gonna wait, but I'm gonna say it right now. So they signed into 2031 with everything that's been going on in that program. And they said they were going to put more money into the NIL. Here's the thing. I know it's only one season, and all that decision was made kind of in mid-season and kind of late in the season to be putting more money in the NIL. So maybe not much can be looked into it, but they only upped it by like $5 to $7 million. That's just, it's not going to be competitive. Now, was that $5 to $7 million more than what Fickell was getting before? Yes, it was. And that's $5 to $7 million on top of what he was getting before, by the way. So he wasn't getting less than 5 to 7. They just added that on there. Now, did they add the 5 to 7 because, hey, here's a little bit more, let's see what you can do? Or was that, hey, here's 5 to 7 more, that's all we got? Those two things is completely different. And I can't believe that at Madison that's all they have either. So that's why I still say this year's going to be very interesting because, like I said, just being competent isn't good enough at Wisconsin. But for now, that would be a step forward. To be fair, Wisconsin hasn't had a lick of luck with its quarterback injury situation since Fickell took over. But that doesn't excuse an attack that needs to thank the heavens for UMass. Otherwise, it would have been the worst in the nation. Here comes the help from the transfer portal to get this thing going. Wisconsin got more receiving help. The Badgers had the worst Power 4 passing game by a mile. When Iowa's passing attack looks like the greatest show on turf compared to yours, there's a serious issue. It loaded up with 5 new receivers to go along with 3 decent-looking holdovers from last year. But they all need someone to get them the ball. So in comes Colton Joseph to save the franchise. The former Old Dominion quarterback is among the most dangerous all-around talents in the nation, from Old Dominion, mind you. More on him in a second. Louisville's Deuce Adams was a good option in case things go wrong, and now the offense should go. The Badgers have the running backs. Leading rusher Darian Dupree is back after leading the team with 363 yards. Wait, didn't Melvin Gordon once get that in a game? I digress. The Badgers brought in Abu Sama III from Iowa State and Byron Jackson II from USC. So it needs to work. The entire offense. There's no way to do this but to plow right through. Wisconsin was last among the Power 4 programs and near the bottom nationally in total offense. Scoring, passing yards, yards per play, first downs, and big plays was the only team in America that didn't have more than 100 plays of more than 10 yards. To get better, it starts with, well, the running game. The 2010 Wisconsin ground attack averaged 320 yards per game. Last year's Badgers rushing game came up with 1,400 yards on the season. It won't take much. Wisconsin was 4-0 when it ran for more than 150 yards and 8-0 when it didn't. The offensive line has to finally be okay. They have veteran guards, and the rest of the line are guys with experience at Power 5 schools. The line has to start looking like Wisconsin O-lines of old. Now on to the defense. It got lost in all of the issues with the offense, but the Wisconsin defense came up with a heroic effort in game after game. It was simple. If it didn't hold the other side to fewer than 17 points, the team didn't have a chance. It'll get more help this season, but it has a few things of its own that do need work. The pass rush was great and should be again. The top pass rushers are gone, but the Badgers reloaded. The pressure comes from the linebackers and edge rushers, and it's the system that provides the opportunities for the speedy outside defenders to attack. Linebacker from Kansas and Justin Boone from Arkansas fit the style to a T, and Tyrese Furby and Sebastian Cheeks should grow into bigger roles. But for this to work, you need tackles, and Wisconsin has them. The Badgers went big in the portal with Hammond Russell IV from West Virginia and Junior Poyser from Buffalo, two 300-pounders who can hold up right away. Jacob Anderson from Illinois State and Nigel Cooper from Appalachian State are good options for the rotation as well. The run defense should hold up again with linebackers and top tacklers Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano back. The Badgers were pounded on by Iowa and Michigan, but that was about it. The front held up against Indiana, was okay against Oregon, and overall allowed just 3.4 yards per carry on the season. Oregon, Michigan, and Iowa combined for 8 rushing scores. Wisconsin gave up 4 in the other 9 games. The mid-range pass defense has to be better. Yeah, the Wisconsin defense held up against Indiana and their ground attack. Old Fernando Mendoza, though, hit 23 of 25 passes. Julian Sain hit 86% of his throws in Ohio State's win, and Ty Simpson connected on 80% of his passes in Alabama's victory. Granted, those were 3 of college football's best quarterbacks, but overall, the Badgers allowed teams to hit 70% of their throws. Takeaways, there weren't any. For all of the good things the Badgers did on defense, they couldn't force enough turnovers to matter. They came up with 2 in the win over Washington, 2 in the win over Miami University, and 2 against the other 10 teams combined. You know how hard it is to recover just 1 fumble in a season? Well, Wisconsin did just that. The transfers have to come up huge in the secondary. Safety Matt Young is back after making 50 tackles, but he's about it for the returning production. Wisconsin dominated the portal when it came to getting defensive backs. Javion Robinson from Arizona State, Bryce West from Ohio State, and Eric Fletcher from Oklahoma State at corner, and Kai Bates from Florida State. But they all need to be amazing. And here's the thing about those transfer portals. Like I said, it all comes under $5 to $7 million. Yes, that's a lot of guys, but the better question is who were the schools going after any of those guys? None that I could really find. So, yes, you got every guy you wanted to get. Yes, you got a lot of them. But what are you getting to fill those spots? So we'll see. But they all need to be – prediction for the Badgers. The home loss to Maryland wasn't forgivable. But there was a huge reason Wisconsin went 4-8. At Alabama, at Michigan, at Oregon, at Indiana, at Minnesota, Ohio State, Iowa, and that doesn't include the wins over Illinois and Washington. Most teams would have struggled to get to 6 wins with that Badger schedule. That doesn't forget how awful the Badgers were on offense. But that's about to improve with the new parts in the backfield. The defense should be just as good, and there's no Indiana this year. There's no Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Illinois, or Washington either. Michigan State, UCLA, Rutgers, Maryland, and Purdue all failed to go bowling last year. Neither did Eastern Michigan or Western Illinois. Dealing with Notre Dame in the opener in Green Bay and going to Penn State and Iowa will be tough. USC is a dangerous game at home, and Minnesota will be a tough out in the battle for the Paul Bunyan Axe. But the schedule won't be an excuse. There can't be any excuses overall, and there can't be any excuses at all. This could be the year Wisconsin wakes up and starts to play like Wisconsin again. Or it could be another complete collapse and Luke Fickell's looking for a new job. I have the Wisconsin Badgers going 7-5. The over-under is 6.5. So that's another over. And will that be enough to keep Fickell his job? I don't know, because it depends on what it looks like. So now moving on to number 13, which is the 6th one of this very long episode, And we'll wrap that up quickly and we'll get on out of here. But thanks for those who are still hanging on. I know it's been a long one. Number 13, Northwestern went 7-6 last year. And don't forget the Wildcats open a brand new Kyle Field this season. The pictures look amazing, but time will tell to see how awesome that stadium truly is. Remember, it is Northern Illinois. The Wildcats offense scored 23.4 points per game and gained 346.1 yards per game. Northwestern's defense allowed 19.8 points per game, 329.8 yards per game. Northwestern's unit rankings: coaching staff 10, depth of roster 14, offense 14, defense 14, quarterback 16, running back 8, wide receiver tight end 13, offensive line 14, defensive line 15, linebacker 15, secondary 12, special teams 13. Best case, worst case, a decent bowl game and too many problems under the weight of a nasty schedule. Key stats from 2025. 1, 8th in the nation in fewest penalty yards, averaging 33.8 yards per game. 2, time of possession, Northwestern 32.18, opponents 27.41. 3, tied for second worst in the nation in punt returns, averaging 1.8 yards per try. Biggest game, Penn State, October 2nd. This is it. It took several years to get up and going, but this is the grand unveiling of the new and improved Ryan Field, after undergoing renovations that pushed well past $800 million. The Wildcats start the Big Ten season at Indiana the week before, and the next conference game is in East Lansing against Michigan State and former head coach Pat Fitzgerald. Keys to the season: even though this is a better team with far more depth than past Wildcat teams enjoyed, it still has to always do the little things right. There can't be a problem with penalties or turnovers. The 21 were too many, or the time of possession battle. Northwestern still has to go full Northwestern. But more than anything else, the Wildcats have to score. They only put up more than 22 points 4 times and won all 4. No, Northwestern has a beautiful stadium, more talent under David Braun, and Chip Kelly comes in as offensive coordinator. Now the Wildcats have to turn it all into wins. You know that line about dressing for the job you want? Welcome to the 2026 Northwestern football team. No, it's not Ohio State, but it got Chip Kelly as its offensive coordinator. No, it's not Oregon, but it got its share of great transfers, with several good enough to have ended up in Eugene or Los Angeles or Ann Arbor or Bloomington. They chose Northwestern, and Northwestern is beginning to look like a Big Ten program again. No, the fancy schmancy redo on the stadium isn't quite finished yet, but that's dropping in early October, and all of a sudden Northwestern will go from the most gorgeous setting in college football, the makeshift mini stadium on the lake, to an NFL caliber palace. Now all Northwestern has to do is start winning more football games. The schedule might have something to do with that, but for now the 2026 program looks like it's about to take another step up. Welcome to Evanston, Chip Kelly. The legendary college football head coach and offensive coordinator won a national title as Ohio State's OC and left for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now he's in charge of Northwestern's offense with plenty of work to do and plenty of new parts joining the mix. The Wildcats upgraded at quarterback. Preston Stone was a nice idea at quarterback last season, and he wasn't bad, but he threw 12 picks and didn't add enough to the ground game. In comes Aiden Childs, a star recruit from Oregon State who left for Michigan State and now should settle into the gig at Northwestern. Here's a great combination of youth and experience with dynamic style to take things up several notches. West Virginia veteran Nico Maricoya is almost certainly the main backup, but he's good enough to start. There's a whole lot to like at running back. Leading rusher Caleb Comafai is back after running for 941 yards and 11 scores. Number 2 back Joseph Hemon II is also back, and from Florida State comes fifth-year senior Gavin Schwick. With 1,463 yards and 19 touchdowns of experience at Oklahoma and then Florida State. Northwestern has a receiving corps. No, it's not the best group of pass catchers in a loaded Big Ten, but it should do more in the Kelly offense. 6'2" Griffin Wild had an all Big Ten season, catching 71 passes for 880 yards and 8 scores. 6'4" Hayden Ilgen was second with 37 grabs, and slot man Drew Wagner is back to be a short-range option. Now it all has to come together. The skill spots were deep and talented, and there's an elite assistant handling the attack, and now the expectations are jacked. It's an offense that can come up with just 346 yards and 23.4 points per game, with most of the parts back to do more. But the offensive line is doing some shifting. It's a young overall group with upside, but it'll take fall camp to fully settle the lineup. Ozimo, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, will play either center or guard. Anthony Bursa will play wherever. Uh, Ozimo doesn't, and everything will fill from there. Running means everything. Even though the Wildcats are better overall, they still don't have elite talent. They have to control the clock and the tempo, and that starts by grinding it out. The problem is that isn't always how Chip Kelly's offenses roll. The Wildcats were 5-0, were running for 199 yards or more, and 2-6 when they didn't. Last year's defense was solid under coordinator Tim McGragle, and this version has a slew of good veterans to build around. The portal built up the depth, especially up front, but now there have to be more big plays behind the line and even more done against the run. The overall results were good enough. There were problems in several areas, but blow off the minor negatives. The Wildcats allowed just under 20 points per game, and that's it. They don't allow points. That's what defenses are supposed to do, correct? Don't worry about how it happens. The line restocked the shelves. It doesn't help to lose top pass rusher Aiden Hubbard, but Michael Cabane has all-star talent at one end, and tackle rotation is solid, and coming in is Glory Stephan from Sacred Heart at tackle, and Jamal Johnson from UCF at one end. The secondary is loaded with options. It joins with the receiving core as one of the most experienced areas. Helped by transfer portal gets at corner. Leading tackle Robert Fitzgerald is back at one safety, and he's one of the best open field hitters in the Big Ten. And versatile option Braden Turner will do a little of everything in a nickel role or at the slot corner. The line might be fine, but the losses hurt. Again, Hubbard is done, and so is interior pass rusher Kamari Pastone. Making things harder is the loss of Anto Saka to Texas A&M, which is a problem because the pass rush needs to be stronger. There was a steady stream of sacks, but the big plays behind the line didn't explode until the bowl win over Central Michigan. There's pressure, but sacks haven't been a big thing at Northwestern for a while. After coming up with 18 in the regular season last year, pushing past 25 would make life a little bit easier. Bad things happen when teams ran on the Wildcats, just like the offense made things better when it ran well. The defense did its job when it held up against good ground attacks. The Wildcats went 7-1 when allowing fewer than 155 yards and 0-5 when allowing 155 or more. Player who needs to shine, senior quarterback Aiden Childs. It seems like he's been around for a decade, but he'll only be 20 going into the season. There might be other options, but the season depends on him being great. He's dangerous on the move, but he couldn't move the Michigan State offense last year. Threw 11 picks in 2024 and only got in a little bit of work at Oregon State. Biggest concern, turnovers. This isn't a team that can get away with multiple mistakes, and that will have to start with Childs. The margin of error this season will be thin, and that means there can't be multiple turnovers. The Wildcats went 1-5 last year and were 2-11 over the last two seasons when turning it over 2 times or more. The prediction. The 23 schedule was relatively easy, and Northwestern went 8-5. There was a problem in 2024 going 4-8, but the schedule turned into a killer, and last year, even with the close battles and good fights, it took a miraculous win over Minnesota to end up with a winning season. This year's team is the deepest yet under David Braun, and that should be just enough to find a way to get to 6 wins. There isn't a true layup on the slate, and that includes the opener against South Dakota State. Fine, so that's a win. And Ball State should be a win too, but hosting Colorado won't be a breeze, and a home date against Rutgers will be a bit of a fight. At Indiana, at Oregon, at Ohio State. Well, there's 3 losses right there. At Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, Penn State, at Michigan State. It'll be another Northwestern season after all. it'll scratch, claw, and find a way to get to a bowl game, even if it takes a little bit of magic. I have Northwestern going 6-6. The over/under is 5.5, so yet again another over. Whew, that was a lot. Not going to keep you guys much here after that. Remember to rate, like, subscribe, and comment. Let's keep the conversation going. I'll definitely see you guys next Friday for 7 through 13. And when I break down the middle of the Big Ten, until next week, hope you all have a great weekend. Be nice to someone. God bless. And as always, peace.